I have to say, I was having major FOMO when you were at Adobe Summit. I went last year. It was when they first announced Firefly and a lot of other things, but Firefly has come such a long way. And I think there was a really big, from what I saw from afar, I tried to join some of the things virtually, although I was at my own conference, which we'll talk about in a bit. But um, what I saw in general was like from a big shift to kind of talking about enterprise at Summit. And I
Hmm.
think Summit for me has always been like enterprise focused, and Max, I think, focused a little bit more on the creative. But I think with
Hmm.
all of these tools, it's no longer one or the other, right? Like
Hmm.
the marketers and the creatives really are able to come together now with these tools. We saw that with the IBM campaign that we talked about on our last pod. So tell me what you saw.
Well, and that's a great point that you mentioned the enterprise because they released, their new what they call it is their Adobe Digital Experience platform, and it's a more complex platform, and it's focused on data and content and the customer journey. So no shocker that data and AI is a big part of this Adobe Summit, but they released this new platform that to me is fantastic. And I really like what you just mentioned about the Firefly, which personalizes the experience for the marketing department. But this platform is very extensive and it has a lot of different elements, but it can be seen as a little confusing if you're not the power user. But some of the things that it had in it was this new Adobe experience with the AI assistants, which is fantastic. This the Gen Studio, which is extension to allow you to have more management over your content. And then they had a unified experience with the customer journey, helping with the collaboration with all the tools that I just mentioned and more. But I still think it falls back on the issue of data and how you get a standardization to have your data sets in a space where it can be maximized by all these different features. So they have what's called the CDP, which the data can go into, but getting it there is going to be kind of a task. But they they have it planned well, but not to the point where the data is going to be standardized where I feel comfortable with it. But it was a very good conference all in all.
Yeah, they talk a lot about the supply chain, the content supply chain.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, when you think about the content supply chain from like ideation to creation and then also
Hmm.
measurement, there's so much that goes into that. And one of the reasons for that is just the amount of marketing material that companies need now. And I think
Hmm.
that's like the creative process and the marketing process. And, as a former marketer, sometimes I sort of take offense to that as if like marketers aren't creative, but I'm
Sure.
not creative the way that some of these people are creative, right? And so I think that the magic in that is the ability for those two teams to collaborate where the marketers have control over the things like the customer journey and the data,
Hmm.
and the the content creators still have control over over the creation of it. We're not just handing this over to AI. AI is just kind of, I think, supercharging people. There's this big,
Good point.
concern, I think, about, especially in the creative community, that like, we saw this like with the film strike that Hollywood is afraid that AI is going to replace creativity. It's not going to. And so I think that Adobe has done a really good job of putting in creative controls that work for marketers, but also give creatives the opportunity to be creative. Firefly
Hmm.
does not just create something for you. It did initially. The first edition of Firefly was like, you put in a prompt and it gives you a fire breathing dragon or whatever it was. But the second edition of Firefly that I saw was, I mean, you can adjust on photos, you adjust aperture, you adjust color,
Hmm.
there's generative fill. There are so many features that allow you to really customize that creative that then
Yep.
goes into the enterprise, right? And that's where sort of the enterprise side takes over. And there's all those data analytics tool to see how is this performing. It allows you to iterate on all of these campaigns and go and see how is it performing. So to your point, if you don't have the right data in there, if you're, garbage in, garbage out, we've heard that a million times, right? So I guess that's the challenge, right? And if you're not starting with what do you know, the more you know about your customer, obviously, the better you're going to produce for
Right.
that experience.
I think that their products and features are phenomenal. The Firefly allows you to take it to that personalization, like you talked about. I think that what's interesting when we were doing marketing, we had to do a lot of this manual. So if you just take a step back away from the data, and you have these features, you can personalize it very quickly by company, by region, by country, by language, and you can change everything that you want on the fly. And you mentioned the content supply chain, how you can, not only activate and manage, but you can measure. There's all these amazing features. The collaboration tools are fantastic, but it does go back to that data management strategy and how do we put our data in a spot to get it to these tools that we want to be able to use. I think there's a gap there,
Mhm.
but at the same time, Adobe is trying to get us there, and they very much showed us that at this conference, which was fantastic. One of the ones that I really liked was how they actually had Major League Baseball. They actually went through what Major League Baseball is doing and how they're actually enhancing the fan experience using products like we just talked about and on multiple levels. And I thought that was very intriguing. And we're getting ready to start a series, in the next couple of months, talking about how these IT companies are impacting these large sporting teams with their technology to beyond just the sponsorship. And Adobe showed us this at the conference, which I thought was really cool because we didn't expect Major League Baseball to be out there talking about what they're getting out of Adobe. So very excited about that last one that I just mentioned.
Well, that's cool. You had Shaq and MLB. I mean, that's kind of
Yep.
cool, right?
They
And that
didn't, not together though.
not together. Actually, that's funny. But Shaq can do a lot of things. If he can play basketball and spin records, maybe he can play baseball too.